We'll get started. Welcome to the Medicine Hat Police Commission March 20th meeting. We will call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. I will start with the land acknowledgement. The Medicine Hat Police Service and its Police Commission respectfully acknowledge that we operate on the ancestral and unceded territories of the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, Stoney Nakoda, and Tsuut'ina nations, as well as the Cree, Sioux, and Saulteaux bands of the Ojibwa peoples. We also recognize that we are on the traditional homelands of the Métis Nation. We honor the enduring connection of Indigenous peoples to this land and express our commitment to reconciliation and to understanding and respecting their rich cultures, histories, and contributions. The conflict of interest. I kindly request that each attending commission member disclose to chair any perceived or known conflicts of interest pertaining to the agenda items outlined for this meeting. Seeing none. Okay, item 3, appointment of chair and vice chair. So the Medicine Hat Police Commission received a resignation of the former chair last month, and with that left a vacancy on our commission and a chair position. Earlier in the closed meeting, we did nominations and election for a chair, which I was the successful candidate. And I'll need a motion to officially appoint new chair in place. Mr. Carolyn, is there a seconder? Ms. Stirk, all in favor? Carried unanimously. And then subsequently, it left a vacancy on vice chair. And Mr. Paul Carolyn was elected as vice chair. We'll need a motion to appoint him to vice chair. Mr. Johnson, and second, Mr. Dumanowski. All in favor? Okay, carried unanimously. So congratulations to us, new chair and vice chair. Okay, and with that, we'll move on to approval of the agenda. Everyone has the agenda in front of them. Is there any additions or errors to the agenda? I would like to add under new business, we'll go 9B. We'll discuss media training. And anything else? A motion to accept the agenda as amended? Vice Chair Carolyn, and second by Commissioner Robles. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Minutes from the February 21st open meeting. Everyone's had a chance to review them. Any errors or omissions or discussion? Councillor Dumanowski?
Just through the chair, just a small friendly amendment. My last name is misspelled in the minutes.
Okay, note that. Any other errors? A motion to accept the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Okay, and second, Ms. Stirk? The mover was Councillor Hirsch. Yeah. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Okay, I'll hand it off to Chief. We're going to move into the presentation section of our meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for everybody for coming. And for the members of our commission, we have 3 presentations tonight, which is probably not normal, but there's a huge amount of great information for the public in these presentations tonight. We'll start off with a fraud awareness presentation. It'll be presented by Constable Curtis Ladisser. Come on down and join us, Curtis. And Curtis is a wealth of knowledge in this area, and I've just set him up now. He has to be a wealth of knowledge in this area. But take it away, Curtis.
Hello, thank you. The last time I gave this presentation, I should maybe back up a little bit. It was a few years ago, and I see a couple familiar faces and a couple new faces. So excited about this. Fraud is very kind of near and dear to my heart. point this thing. Well, we'll get to the next slide in a minute, but I'll start right away. So kind of introduction for me is I started off in the financial sector as an accountant before policing, and then started with investments in banking in Europe and Asia, and then back to Canada, and then joined Calgary Police Service. I spent 3 years with Calgary Police Service before moving down to Medicine Hat. And in Medicine Hat here, I currently am in the Economic Crimes Unit, which is within the Criminal Investigative Section. And I also am the polygraph examiner for the service. Excuse me. But fraud is definitely my passion here. So what we're going to go through, it's not going to be a long presentation, but it's certainly an important presentation. So we're going to go over some statistics. Statistics over the last few years have always been on the rise. They're continued to be on the rise just because of the nature of fraud. It's not a violent crime, it's low risk, and it's high yield or high reward. Now we're going to go through some fraud trends overview. We're going to look at the frauds locally, nationally, and internationally. And then we'll wrap it up. If there's any questions throughout this, please let me know, raise your hand. I know because as we go through, we may forget things, or if you want to bring something to light or any questions whatsoever, or if there's any behind me as well. So this is actually 2023. My mistake on that. Reported frauds, it says 2022. This is 2023. In 2022, there were approximately 465 calls for service. This past year, 2023, we're up to 529. It is on the rise in Canada across the board, and it will continue to be on the rise. The new technology and everything continuously moving forward with cell phones, smartphones, banking, payroll, identity. So much of our identity now is logged online or contained online. This sector will continue to grow. And last year, this is with our police service here, we were $2 million lost locally. And in 2022, 2023, as it states there, we're up to $3 million lost. We can bank on about 10 to 15% of that being retained, being come back and back to our victims, and not 100% loss. So we're constantly trying to improve on that number, but it kind of is what it is with this. So I'm going to go through some fraud trends here. The first thing I'm going to talk about is counterfeit currency, and then we're going to move on to internal frauds or internal thefts. It's kind of the only, and number two there, internal frauds is the only type of fraud really where my polygraph kind of crosses with my fraud work. And then wire transfers or mass market frauds is what we mostly see. And then moving on to some organized crime, explaining that a little bit. So counterfeit currency, as we see here, we've got the Frontiers series of the Canadian note. I put this up here not to go through everything and all the security features on our Canadian currency because we don't see a lot of counterfeit currency in Canada, oddly as that is. We'll see American counterfeit currency in Canada, and we will see Canadian currency, counterfeit currency down in the States. And the reason for that is we're very used to seeing Canadian currency. Vendors are very used to seeing Canadian currency. And we're not so used to seeing American currency. So of course, that's what we're going to be looking at. Throughout here, and I know there's members of the public here as well, I'll give a couple of tips for vendors and for business owners out there, what to be aware of and the trends and how to protect ourselves. And with currency, it really comes down to, there's a couple of common features about currency all over the world that is security features that are common. And the biggest one is that feel of currency, and the shoulders on any of the silhouettes up there will be raised. Every shoulder will be raised. Faces, heads may be raised, may not be raised. It's down to the country and the currency. But every currency in the world, on the shoulders of the silhouettes, it'll be raised. Okay? And the feel of money, and that's the biggest thing, is just the feel of it. This is probably one of our smallest areas, my smallest area of fraud, and one of the oldest areas of fraud. Okay, any questions about currency? Kind of running through that quite quickly here. Internal frauds, internal thefts. This is what we see a lot of. This is the local crimes. This is what we see in internal. And when we have employees, internal thefts or internal frauds, we have this triangle that we're looking at. And this is perceived pressure, perceived opportunity, rationalization. What we're looking at is somebody has a need for money, somebody's in a tight spot. We look at for divorce, gambling, drug addictions, anything like that, anything new. Anything new that we'll come across. I usually have one or two of these files I'm carrying at all times, internal thefts here in town. Yeah, I don't want to go too much into it. There's a couple of open files right now, but they're usually professional companies. They're usually well-paid, big organizations, big places here in town. The grocery stores, accounting firms, law firms, things like that, schools. Internal frauds, we have kind of I don't want to say 100%. However, when we get into the other frauds, and you can see how vast it actually is, where internal frauds, internal thefts, that's something that we can actually put our finger on, and I can say, yes, this is the cause, and I've got a target for my investigation. Right. One more thing about internal frauds. As we go through, I work with a lot of partners out in the public and the professional world that helps me with internal frauds, and a lot of my large internal frauds, and when I say large, large is relative to who I'm dealing with. And it is just a number that I deal with, but I deal right from, I think I've got one for $400 right to, $1.6 million. And we need to deal with them the same way, but a lot of times the larger ones will come in from another private investigative firms or fraud investigative firms. One of the biggest one is going to be M&P here in town, Myers Norris Penny, and they will have a report that they'll submit to myself, and it's something that I can't look at until the end to see kind of where we're at, and but it's always interesting, and they're very, very helpful. I have a lot of partners out there saying that I am the Economic Crimes Unit of Medicine Hat Police Service is a bit of a fallacy. There's so many partners, and we'll get to that a little bit. And I'll make reference to it as well. Is that there's a lot of great organizations and people out there that help out with a lot of investigations. So that's internal thefts, internal frauds. Hey, wire frauds, mass market frauds. This is the one that we see all the time. We get text messages from the CRA. We get text messages from iTunes, all sorts of things like that. They come across. That is that mass marketer, the phishing. The reason why they do that, and it seems so apparent, it seems so ridiculous when we get those text messages, in particular, we'll just speak about the text messages right now. But it's that phishing campaign. So if they send out 2,000 text messages, it takes them little or no time to do that nowadays. They can do that from, their home, their basement, from a computer, and send out 2,000. They get one person reply to it, and then they've made more money than you can knocking over a Circle K or a 7-Eleven, where the risk is really quite high and the reward is very, very low. In Medicine Hat here, and certainly for the month of March, which is Fraud Month, we've been putting out awareness through media, online. And what is that for? Is for educating the public and businesses alike. And it is for these phone calls. So the biggest ones that we've seen in the last summer and the summer before, the grandparent frauds. I don't know if you guys remember the grandparent frauds, but they come in with this phone call, and it starts with, I'm gonna jump in ahead of myself here. We'll go back and forth here. It starts with a picture, a story. And those ones in particular I speak to, but all of these mass marketing frauds follow the same procedure. But they start off with that picture, that story. And it starts, hey, grandma, grandpa, I was in a car accident. Somebody else's car, there's drugs in the car, I got arrested. I can't talk anymore, I'll pass you over to and they usually use some sort of common term, US TV victims assistance term of bail bondsman or some lawyer. Pass it over to them and say, we need to make bail for your grandson or granddaughter. You may not recognize their voice because they have a cold. They go through all this, plus they're always listening. On that phone call, they're always listening, getting information, getting it, and it's called that social engineering. And they're quite brilliant at it, and it's ever changing. So in the summers, and I'm proud to say with the help of the criminal investigation section and patrol officers, we made arrests in 2021 for the grandparent fraud. And they led us out east into our national frauds. I'm jumping all over the place here, but trying to make all this into a small compact thing for you guys. So made some arrests and worked with the OPP as well as Quebec and Montreal police services and followed the crimes out there. And then this last summer, we had it as a local doing pickups for grandparent frauds. And with the help with patrol units that were on the ball, then we were able to make arrests and charge a local person with regards to that, who was with organized crime, was hired by somebody out east. And so that is again followed up by my partners in the east with Montreal and OPP. So I'm just going to flip back here. So that's the pitch story: create a problem, send money, repeat, or abandon. And this is used with all sorts of different frauds and scams. So for me to come up here and try and list off the frauds, beware of this, be on the lookout for this, is almost pointless or moot. The one that's repeating constantly right now because it is so successful is the grandparent fraud. But these are just a few of what we're seeing right now. Yeah.
On the grandparents fraud, so the dude that's doing the pickup, is he usually just, is he a local criminal, or is he just sort of an unwilling shill who's been hired? Who is this guy?
Yeah. So the first one, 2021, was somebody they were from out east, they were from Montreal. They had a rental car, there's two of them, they were traveling around and they were doing the traveling road show. So somebody was making phone calls from Montreal, and the pickups were happening here from somebody who drove out from Montreal, who I work quite a bit with Lethbridge as well, because if we're getting hit, they were hit or they're about to get hit. And they work in about 3 to 5 days. And that person doing the pickups will travel from here to Lethbridge, up to Calgary, Red Deer, Lacombe, Edmonton, over to Saskatoon, down to Regina, and then work their way back. The investigators I work with turns into a pretty small, tight, driven community that is quite fortunate to make some arrests on this one. We have some excellent members of the public that were on the ball that helped me identify these people. Now that one was from Montreal. This last one was a local person who, with the interviews that went on, we didn't get any further than that right now, and we're still working on it, of course, but my thoughts and the way that it was set up and the process that they had, that would have as well been based out east Ontario or Quebec. Does that answer your question? Yeah, it's a bit of both, really. Well, there's all sorts of these scams that go on. From the grandparent fraud, we had in a matter of a week, we had, between 10 and 12 reported instances where we went out and tried to be there for the pickups. However, whenever we see that, there's 12 to 15 of these reports, we're going to see twice as many or 3 times as many that actually occurred, because the biggest thing that hinders our investigation and my investigation of frauds, and especially this fishing and mass market, is shame on the victims. And I see it all the time. And I've personally experienced it when my mother phoned me up and she's like, "Oh my goodness, Curtis, are you okay?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about, Mom? Mom lives just south of Calgary. Are you okay? Somebody said you were in an accident and you got arrested." I'm like, "Mom, I was an accountant. I'm not driving around crazy like, like it's not something, this is who I am. I'm a copper. Everything's fine." And then she realized how ridiculous it sounded when they were phoning her. But it's that shame, and you could see that. And my mom's a very, very smart woman. She was a nurse and then worked in the education system. And yet she was taken. And her son's a copper who comes with all these stories, on the weekends when we chat. But it's that shame. And if we could get over that it's not a sign of a lack of intelligence. It is social engineering, where they will find what you care about and pry through that. So grandparents is a good one, because grandparents want to help. Parents are taking over everything. They want to just be seen as helping. They pull on the heartstrings. That's how they do it. That's their pitch. That's their story. So the most important thing I can say to the public, and as well to you, is that in order for us and our community to protect ourselves against this and bring that number, instead of going from 2 million to 3 million, start bringing that down, is that second guess everything. Have a few things that you have already talked about with the family. Have a safe word. I had one person with a safe word on this grandparent fraud, and they said, "Okay, well, if you're my grandson, what's the safe word?" "Well, I don't remember it. I'm really stressed out." "Perfect. Call me when you know it." Beep. And it's done. Like, have a safe word. Talk about this stuff. If it's too good to be true, if it's an investment fraud and you can make 40% return on investment within a year, if it's too good to be true, and we've had people leave their life savings, or lose their life savings, sorry. It's incredibly sad. And I know that there's more out there, but because of that shame, we don't get that information from that investigation. So, any questions about mass market frauds? Okay. So, with this mass market frauds, a lot of the money goes international. It leaves Canada. If I can catch it before it leaves Canada, then I can put a freeze on it. We had a Bitcoin fraud that stole a family's, a gentleman and his wife's life savings and retirement, and he was newly retired, just a few years, stole his retirement into a Bitcoin investment that promised 40% return on investment, and it was moved from some Bitcoin wallet or online, again, this online, bank to a bank in commerce out of Calgary, and I was able to get a hold of that before it then left the country. He was already planning on going back to work because he's got no money. But for every one that we get the money back, there's 10 or 15 or 20 that we don't get the money back. And as soon as that leaves the country, that's really hard to follow up on. It usually goes to Panama, Switzerland, or Hong Kong, the 3 biggest ones. And as soon as they go there, 70% of the money that leaves Canada or any country in regards to a fraud is for terrorist financing. Now, when I say terrorist financing, our minds go crazy just because of what's going on in the world right now. However, terrorist financing is anything refinancing criminal organizations that prey upon the public, and that's what that means by that. So 70% of that goes back into into that, dealing with more online and more payroll frauds right now and everything. It's a snowball effect. So going with, speaking about organized crime now, this is that we're talking about locally, we're talking about nationally, and then internationally. And I see all three of them, and when I categorize them locally, I'm able to investigate that and track that down. I use lots of partners in the community. I'm gonna skip ahead again because it's my presentation, and I made it so I can. There's some of my partners. So these are the partners that I use. So working locally, they make my job so much easier. And I help them out with banking, and they help me out with investigations, and together we can protect the public and our community. And that's locally. Nationally, I work with our CMP, other police services, credit bureaus, 2 credit bureaus, mostly with Equifax. Work with all that to keep our community safe again. However, reaching out and making this effective for on a larger scale, Canada-wide. Internationally, I have worked with Interpol, I have worked with other organizations around the world, but it's mostly just to advise them, and then they must then start their own investigation and on their own. And it's hard to share information internationally, just through the courts, and I won't bore you with that kind of stuff. However, nationally, we are very, very effective, and we're only getting better and better. Now I'll mosey back through. Any questions about organized crime? So when we see this, it also includes identity theft and investments. Right now, there's a lot of break and enters to post offices, and they're stealing mail, and then they make a persona and impersonation and apply for credit and steal your identity. And that's something that we can put a stop to very easily. They think it's quite ingenious what they're doing, but it's really, really not. So how do we protect our community, not listing the scams? They're too involved, it's whack-a-mole. When we get one licked, another one comes right back up, right? So it is, be aware, question everything if it's too good to be true. Speak with your family about it, have a plan, have a safe word. If you need help, and you're sending a message to your family, you need help, or send money, or whatever it is, have a safe word. It can't hurt. We have safe words with our security companies. We can have safe words with our family. I thought that was ingenious. It came from a retired couple that started that here in town. But detect, deter, and prevent. Ideally, I'd like to be not as busy as I am with frauds, and it would be fantastic if I was there twiddling my thumbs or doing just my polygraph stuff, but unfortunately I'm not. So if we can stay vigilant and question everything. Right? And then again, just kind of reiterating what I've already spoken about, talking about my partners, FinTrack, RCMP, municipal agencies, Canada Revenue Agency, U.S. Secret Service. Everybody asks about U.S. Secret Service. In the United States, 90% of the job of the U.S. Secret Service is currency and not just protecting the president. So I deal with and work along with the U.S. Secret Service quite a bit. I find U.S. currency, it goes down to them. They find Canadian currency, comes up to the Bank of Canada and myself, or wherever we believe it's coming from. Okay. So we have Alberta Community Crime Prevention. Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre is excellent. It's something that tracks trends, but they're not an enforcement agency, and they don't share information with regards to investigations. They share it for public knowledge and deterrence. Better Business Bureau as well, and Equifax, or credit bureaus. That was very, very fast. I think the longest I've spent on a presentation like this has been about 3.5 hours, and the shortest was, I think I just did it. So my apologies if I rambled really fast, spoke fast, or jumped around on different topics, but there's a lot of things. And like I said at the start, this is very, very important to me and important to my community because I can see a lot of hardships and happening because of it. So I've got some passion towards this. But is there any questions?
Counselor Dumanowski?
Thank you, Curtis, I'll call you. Thank you for the presentation. I saw this presentation in the past when you've presented to commission, when I was on commission in the past, but still relevant, probably more relevant than ever, quite frankly. Obviously, you spoke to the types of scams that are out there, and you highlighted the grandparent one, which sadly is probably, as you indicated, one of the widely used ones when it comes to, vulnerable sectors such as a grandparent, which is typically a senior group demographic. But I asked this once here a couple of meetings ago. I've only been on a few commission meetings since I've been back here. But one of the concerns that certainly is starting to gain traction or seemingly gain traction, and there's enhanced concern around, is the advancement of AI. And as it relates to voice over authentication or secondary authentication, have you encountered, or some of your partners, are there any trends around that? Because obviously that's a vastly and quickly moving environment that is kind of taking over everything. So, I mean, maybe I'll start with that. Have you seen any of that, or are there any concerns around that, or is that just something on the radar at this point?
Thanks so much for that question. It's an excellent question. It is absolutely on the radar. We haven't seen it come in yet because security protocols and features right now aren't utilizing that face-to-face or that Zoom or that online. We're still down to identification and kind of hand-to-hand and telephones. However, you can see that when it's going to be coming on telephones. However, we're not reaching the security protocols just for voice analysis. However, we're seeing a lot of it on the forensic side of it, or computer forensic side. I work quite closely with our computer forensic investigator, and more so about not financially driven crimes, but person crimes or defamation crimes. Yeah.
Just if I could, just supplementary through the chair, I as much as we talk about some of the trends, and maybe I'm even ahead of myself, but I obviously with the likes of AI and other things like that, but one of the things that you highlighted, which certainly is consistent with messaging we've gotten back from our auditors. I chaired audit in the past. Councillor Hirsch is currently the chair, but the big players, KPMG, MNP, and others who have said that a lot of the fraud opportunities, crimes of opportunity, come from the internal factor that you referred to, the internal frauds, and they often had highlighted the internal controls of any organization are critical to mitigating this, because in many cases we think things are advancing and have become more sophisticated that we forget about the most conventional ones, which is crimes of opportunity or trust. And so it's prudent that you bring that up as well in your presentation, because we don't want to lose sight of that it's always going to be the ones that we're hearing about in the media or in the trends, because it could be the crimes of opportunity. So more of a statement there, but I appreciate your presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's something that it is very important, the checks and balances that we have in different organizations and different businesses and local businesses. And it doesn't matter the size of that business. It can be a two-person business with a bookkeeper on the side that you've been working with for 14 years. The pressures of life, they come at us from all different sides, and we deal with people on their worst day, and sometimes, unfortunately, that's what it is. But the checks and balances, we can't overlook that, and they seem mundane. But after you've kind of been bitten by this, then we'll always go back to it and refresh them. So, yeah, it's an excellent statement.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? thank you for the presentation. I think everyone in this room has experienced the phone calls, the text messages, emails, all the phishing scams. When you're talking about all the examples, I thought, oh yeah, I just had one the other day from Calgary Police Service telling me I owed for a parking ticket on a text message. And if I didn't pay, I'd face significant legal actions. I deleted it, but I forgot about it until you mentioned it. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So thank you. I think it's something we definitely need to talk more about and bring more awareness. And like you said, question everything. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for having me and inviting me here to speak.
Madam Chair, our next presentation, actually B and C go together quite well, which is why they're going to be back to back. We're going to start off. One of the things in our recent public survey that we recall is that our citizens told us that 2 areas of our city, that being the downtown and the flats, that people didn't feel safe as they should feel there. We take that to heart, and we have taken some immediate action with, we're going to take a bit of a different approach this spring in terms of how our downtown strategic plan and surrounding area, and then we'll follow that with Sergeant Brian Bourne with the downtown patrol unit. But both go together quite well. We'll start off with Inspector Secondiak.
Thanks, Chief. And I just want to invite the Chief and Joe to jump in at any time. We all had input into this plan, so it's very important that if I miss anything, please feel free to jump in. So to give you a little bit of history in the downtown core, since I've been here for just about 25 years, we've had various models. We've had bike units, we've had 2 people, we've had 4 people, we've had foot patrols, generally in the summer months, and then we started the downtown patrol unit about 3 years ago, and that's been tremendously successful. But as the Chief said, there's still been issues in our surveys with the issues in downtown. So I'll just highlight those and some of the ideas we've come up with to really augment some of our past practices. So in creating this, we looked at what we've done in the past, what's going on in the industry in different police agencies, what's been successful and what hasn't been. So our goals, again, are to have a safe and vibrant downtown, and I think that's true for City Council, business owners downtown, the Chamber. We want to reduce the fear of crime, and I know Brian will talk about this a little bit, but our actual crime stats downtown aren't that high compared to other areas of the city, but I can tell you the fear of crime is higher than anywhere else, and I'll go over that data here in a moment. Reduce criminal offenses that do occur, and again, DPU has been outstanding at apprehending criminals when crime does occur downtown. And then have a greater awareness of roles and responsibilities of our partner agencies. A lot of the calls we get to, people call the police because we're the only agency that works 24/7, and they have no one else to go to, so they call us. Some of them aren't actual crimes, but we're there to help. And then again, we'll have the ability, when this plan is implemented, to augment our future plans based on the results. So we have KPIs built into the actual plan, and we'll see what's effective and what's not, and be able to change it for years to come. So as I had mentioned, this is our recent public survey. That graph is difficult to read, but again, the crime data downtown is not higher than anywhere. In fact, it's higher at areas like the hospital. We get more calls for service, the Medicine Hat Mall. So downtown is about the same as other areas of the city. But again, people feel afraid to go downtown, and the flats is number 2. So in our recent survey, there was a 24% increase in people who avoid downtown because they don't feel comfortable. And again, that's concerning for us. Part of our job is public safety and reducing the fear of crime. So in creating this, we talked to many stakeholders, but this is one that really stuck out for me, and I think the executive team when we went over it. But when I met the fire service earlier this year, they had a dramatic increase in fire calls and encampments, and I know there's a lot of encampments that aren't in the downtown core, but I'll explain further. So they went to last year 60 fire calls at encampments. Extremely dangerous. There's accelerants, there's propane tanks, there's open flame, and you can see it's a dramatic increase than there has been in the past. And this year to date, This was done in January. There was, I believe it was 6 at the time. I met Parks and Recreation, and a concern they had was really the cost to clean up some of these encampments, get garbage from some of the wooded areas in town along the river specifically. So we came up with this strategic plan, or these tactics, to hopefully address some of the issues in the downtown core. Strategy 1 is to increase proactive enforcement and our presence in the community. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Internally, number 2 is intelligence gathering, and this has been done in the past, but I just added it to the plan to highlight some of the things that we're doing. Strategy 3, again, DPU is heavily involved in this strategy, as well as number 1, crime prevention and deterrence, ensuring public confidence, and then lastly, offender accountability. So just to highlight, one of the things we're doing in Strategy 1, and again, DPU is heavily involved in this, but we're going to create a PEACE team, which stands for Proactive Engagement and Community Enhancement Team. So we've met with various stakeholders in the community, including bylaw services with the police service, Medicine Hat Fire Service, community housing, Parks and Rec, AHS, and the Mywasson Center. So last year, bylaw alone went to 134 encampments in the city. And again, they're not typically in the downtown core, although there are some. But the people, the clients that stay at the encampments often frequent the downtown core. So there's a lot of involvement with DPU who often know who they are. Again, there's health risks at these encampments, and I've seen some of them that have been there for months. So the 134 we went to, very concerning. And those are community complaints. So what I'm most proud of this is having the Mywasson Center come with us. They agreed to perhaps a month ago. It's really some of the people, not all, but some of the encampments we go to have Indigenous people, and it's really reaching out to them and providing them services. And really that's the goal with this PEACE team. It's to identify the encampments and provide resources in the community. With all of these stakeholders there, it should be easily done. There will be enforcement if the encampments are not cleaned up in a reasonable amount of time, but our goal is not primarily enforcement. It's to provide supports, get these people housed. A lot of them have addictions and mental health issues, and provide those when we initially attend. And again, it's to identify them, provide the supports, and then use enforcement as a last resort if we have to. Oops, I went the wrong way. The second one is intelligence gathering, and this has been done in the past. We use our MHPS analysts to look for records for criminal activity, disseminate information to the downtown core. And we have weekly meetings. They're on Thursdays now, every week, and our analyst does an amazing job at really identifying crime trends, who the primary offenders are for that past week, and disseminating it to DPUs involved in it, and schools and patrols. It's really outstanding. And as well to have street operations. So this is directed patrols from intel unit that I'll explain later, and record all of our warnings and diversions. I don't think we were doing that effectively in the past, but now we'll have more data and be able to disseminate that more effectively. Strategy 3 is crime prevention and deterrence. So this again will be, we'll have directed patrols. So if our analyst says that the 500 block of 3rd Street is an issue, we'll have more patrol resources as well as DPU in that area. We'll create policing plans. So we've done one this year so far in an area where, okay, what would be effective? Is it increased patrols at night? Is it foot patrols in an area? Or is it other things that we can do operationally? And using CPTED, so this stands for Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. Extra training's already occurred. I know 2 members of DPU are attending in the very near future, I think in the next couple of weeks. And I know Sergeant Bourne, he'll speak to it a little bit, but he recently did one in the downtown core. So highly effective, and we need more and more people trained, so there's a absolute thirst by businesses downtown to have SEPT heads done on them, and as well with the city. And then lastly is a public safety camera. We don't have one here. This will be a budget request that will be coming up for the forthcoming year, but these are utilized throughout cities in North America. We've just never had one in Medicine Hat, but they're overt cameras. They have red and blue lights. They're on a trailer. You can move them around to different locations. It doesn't actually, it deters crime. It pushes them off to other areas rather than capture crime, but highly effective. I know the chief's had some experience with them in his previous job, and you see them if you go to major urban cities. They're actually commonplace. And then strategy 4 is about public confidence. So we want a collaborative presence in the downtown core, having more partner agencies involved. The auxiliary constables, I believe they were last summer too, but we're going to sign them for downtown patrol unit for the spring and summer months. It'll be in the next couple of months, so they'll have an extra 4 members signed with Sergeant Bourne and his team. And part of what we want to do is solicit intelligence, so it's really talking to the business owners, and again, DPU does this now, but finding new intelligence, an easier way to capture it, and we have an idea around that, and making inquiries and getting that through the mobile app to disseminate that in our intelligence meetings. And then lastly is offender accountability. So I know Sergeant Bourne will touch on this as well, but and we've done this in the past, but there's out of all the people that use downtown, there's a very few that are high-risk individuals, and we've done it in the past where we've created bail packages for them, so it's 0 tolerance for criminal offenses. So we will arrest them, take them to jail, and have a bail hearing. Now, we hear this all the time on social media. It's not up to us to determine what happens in that court process. Sometimes they get out, and we have to deal with them again. But we'll have these bail packages with all the history of the subject that we can give to the court to make an informed decision if the person should be held in custody or not. And of these small amount of people, and I think last time I talked to Sergeant Bourne, it was about 7 or 8, there'll be 0 tolerance for any breaches for court conditions or any criminal offenses. And that should help reduce recidivism, or the number of people we deal with over and over again. And that is our idea for a strategic plan for downtown this summer, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Prior to questions, Commissioner, probably what might be best, because these presentations go together real well, maybe we could have Sergeant Brian Bourne start the downtown. That might answer your questions. I think the 2 presentations together are outstanding, and then you guys can both stay up together for questions after, if that works. And I'll introduce Brian Bourne. So he's been the sergeant in our downtown unit for a while now. Brian, his team members aren't with him tonight, but it's Constable Mitch Young and Constable Lisa Jarvis. They know the folks in our downtown. They know them by name. On a daily basis, they speak to these folks, and they're trying to get them help. People that suffer from mental health and addictions need to be ready to accept help, though. So it's bless Brian and his folks, because they do the hard work of asking over and over and trying to get them that help. Just to jump on a couple things that Brent said is that what you see playing out downtown and the neighborhoods around it is mostly tied to mental health and addiction, and the services for these folks are in our downtown and neighboring neighborhoods. That's why they congregate there. I've heard in our city, I've heard it said to me about why bother people in encampments, why not let them live in these tents in the river valley, wherever. And I'll tell you why is these people are at risk for overdose with no one knowing they're even there. They're at risk for fires and other things, which Brent mentioned, and then they lose their life that way, or there's property damage. And what we have seen in all cities is property crime tends to increase around encampments. So it's not right to leave these things to let them happen in any community. So that's why Brent is spearheading this initiative this summer, and it goes hand in hand with what Sergeant Bourne's doing, and we'll let Brian go down that road. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Police Commission, for letting me present to you tonight. So I am Brian Bourne. I'm a sergeant with the Medicine Hat Police Service. I've been with the Downtown Patrol Unit since its inception in October of 2020, and I'll tell you a little bit about what we do and encounter in a shift and what we've experienced over the last 3.5 years being downtown. So first off, our mission is to enhance the safety and promote a welcoming atmosphere in the downtown core. So we want to make people want to come downtown, whether it's businesses moving down there, people coming to enjoy the area. We want to make sure everybody feels safe. Who's part of my team? So as Inspector Skonyak mentioned, we have analyst Amber Thompson, that's a female in the lonesome picture there. And then my team recently changed at the end of September. I have Constable Mitch Young and Constable Lisa Jarvis working with me. And as I said, the history of the Downtown Patrol Unit is we began policing on October 22nd of 2020. That's the first time that Massat Police Service had a dedicated unit year-round to the downtown core. Previously to that, it was more of a summer gig, bike patrol, that type of thing. Other units being redeployed down there to help assist. So since then, we've been full-time year-round downtown. Our area of responsibility is from River Road to 5th Street and 3rd Avenue Southeast to North Railway, basically. We do go outside of that a little bit, but that's our primary area of responsibility. And our mandate. So obviously our job is to do the policing responsibilities in the downtown core. So any type of complaint that comes in involving a police need, that's our baby. Community engagement, so if there's an activity going on downtown, Midnight Madness, the Together Again festival that happened in September after COVID restrictions were all lifted, anything like that, we want to be a part of that, be visible to the public, and to help make sure that those events run smoothly. We're also part of problem solving downtown, so we deal very closely with all the business owners down there. So if we notice an area or a business that's struggling with whether it's crime or certain types of behaviors that are happening on or around their property, we work with the businesses to come up with solutions that will prevent them from having to call us. And community partnerships, so we work closely with community housing, mental health and addictions, Alberta Health Services outreach teams, and many others to help problem solve and help to make the downtown area more safe. And relationships. A lot of what we do is building rapport with I call them the vulnerable population of Medicine Hat. So the homeless, the drug addicted, and those suffering from mental illness. My team has worked very hard. We know the names of 99% of the people that are hanging around downtown, and us going to deal with them and being able to call them by name, I think helps to de-escalate the situations many times. And it's helped us in investigations. We can view video surveillance and often identify who our culprits are just because of our familiarity with them. When my unit started and when it just recently changed here in September, our first mandate was to get out and know all of the businesses that were in our area of responsibility. In the middle of this slide, you'll see a contact sheet that we handed out to every single business. And it's got our names, our work cell phone numbers, and our email addresses so that businesses can reach out to us through text, through direct phone calls, or through emails to let us know what's going on their property, and then we can be more responsive. We often tell business owners to create a three-way texting messaging with us so that they send one message, it goes to all three officers in case one of us is away on leave or whatever reason are unable to respond, the other two will be able to. Which leads me to our direction to them. So how do they contact us, or when should they contact us? So we obviously tell them if it's an emergency, if somebody's life is in danger, they need to call 911. Or if there's an active crime happening, there's just procedures in place. 911 will often be the ones responding, but we just have protocols that need to be followed. And then we tell them if they need an officer today, but it's not necessarily urgent, then they can either call the non-emergency number and we will be the ones that respond, or they can call or text us directly. I would say quite easily about 80% of our calls for service that the Downtown Patrol Unit respond to are phone calls or text messages directly to us, rather than going through the police service dispatchers. So what are the main concerns and issues downtown? So I just had these stats pulled by our crime analyst, Amber Thompson. These were the top 5 calls for the downtown core that the Downtown Patrol Unit is responsible for. So our number 1 call easily is unwanted guests. It reaches about about 10%, about 20% of the calls that we respond to are unwanted guest complaints. So people being in an area that somebody feels they shouldn't be or they've overstayed their welcome. Suspicious person complaints, which could be anything from this person's acting weird, behaving weirdly, or we just want the police to check on them, something doesn't seem right. Check the well-being. Typically, those are people that are maybe passed out or possibly under the influence of a substance and they want the police to check on them. Found property, we get wallets, various property turned into us, backpacks, that kinds of stuff. And then other disputes include anything that's not domestic, not physical, and are typically verbal arguments. What are the challenges for the downtown patrol unit? Weather conditions. So when the weather is good, everybody wants to be outside, so do the vulnerable population. So that's when we see our complaints typically around park areas or on the streets because everybody's out and about enjoying the weather. That's when problems can happen with some of our vulnerable population. Alternatively, when the weather's really bad, we also see calls for service. So now they're seeking shelter when it's raining, when it's snowing, or it's inclement weather. So our calls don't necessarily drop, they just change. Another challenge is the client's readiness for change. So we know in Medicine Hat there are lots of resources available for our population, whether it's in terms of housing, addictions, or mental health. But if the person isn't willing or ready to accept that help, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. That's been one of my biggest frustrations because what seems like an easy solution is not necessarily that. And then lastly, housing disruption. So during my time downtown, one of the Toronto towers, so the apartment buildings just to the west of the downtown Dairy Queen, had a fire inside, and the whole structure they had to vacate. So that caused its own certain issues for the downtown because we had a bunch of people that were now homeless or needed to be rehoused. And a disruption in anybody's housing causes anybody stress, especially when you're already dealing with other mental health challenges or other addiction challenges. Underlying issues, as I said, mental health addictions and housing, those are the biggest issues facing many of the people that we deal with downtown. These are not issues that are unique to Medicine Hat. If anybody in here has traveled outside of Medicine Hat, you know every city in North America and probably worldwide are dealing with these same factors. We get many people that will tell us they thought we had a problem in Medicine Hat until they went on vacation to such and such a place and saw what it was like there and come back and say Medicine Hat doesn't have any problems anymore. I've had people say that to me more than once. But we don't want our city to get to a problem state like some other cities, so we want to try and catch it on the front end with some of these projects that we've got going on. And most case, methamphetamine and fentanyl are at the root of the drug addictions. It's just the drug of choice right now, the cost and easily accessible. For the downtown patrol unit, these are some of the other responsibilities that I and my team members have. So I'm also the police liaison for Drug Treatment Court, which I think is a very successful program in combating drug addiction and getting people on the straight and narrow and surrounding them with resources and dealing with the addiction issue. I'm also on our critical incident stress management team and the ceremonial team, so I've got duties outside of my downtown patrol responsibilities. And then for Mitch and Lisa, they are control tactics instructors, TAC members, recruitment team, and athletic committee are just some of the duties that each of them carry. As Inspector Secondiak said, I am currently trained in the Crime Prevention through Environmental Design, or CPTED program, and Mitch and Lisa will be trained within a month here. And what that means is we can go to businesses free of charge and do analysis of their property. And we've done, I would guess, probably about 15 to 20 of these downtown already in the last 3 years. But we look at the property, we look at problem areas, and then we use our training to come up with seemingly simple solutions, but sometimes they can be financially costly. But I can tell you the businesses that have taken our suggestions and done the remedies properly, they've reduced or eliminated their need to call us for the issues that they were currently reporting. The pictures here, the big white gate at the top left, that's the back door of National Bank on First Street Southeast across from City Hall here. They had problems with people loitering in there, hanging out, sleeping. They put up this nice fancy gate, and we have not been called to back there since. The metal gray gate at the bottom left there is a business on 2nd Street Southeast. Same thing, just the design of the building. There was a nook back there that people would always hang out in. They put up this gate and problems have been eliminated. And then lastly, to the right there, you'll see there's a bunch of broken concrete in that flower bed. This is behind the RBC Dominion Securities on South Railway. So prior to them putting in that broken concrete, it was just a flower bed, and they'd have people sleeping, hanging out, using drugs, everything you can imagine back there. And they've made it uncomfortable for them, and again, their problems have been nearly eliminated. Some advice we give on ways that people can protect themselves downtown, and a lot of these are for employees or business owners downtown. Number one, report all suspicious and unusual activity. Obviously, the police can't help you if we don't know what's going on, and in giving them an easy way to contact us through text and phone call, we think that we've done a pretty good job at bridging that gap to knowing what's going on downtown. The buddy system, so if people have to stay late and work after dark, leave with a coworker so that you're not alone going to your vehicles. If you do have to stay late and you're by yourself, we advise people to move their vehicles to safe parking areas under lights where it's busy and not so remotely. And then lastly, to restrict access to your business. So if your business is not one that needs access for walk-up customers, we suggest you lock your door if you're working alone, or at least have an alarm or a buzzer on the door that alerts you when people are entering so that you won't be startled by somebody coming in that you didn't notice. Common ways to protect your property. Again, report all suspicious and unusual activity. We encourage lighting to dark areas because it's less susceptible to crime. Eliminating enclosure or gathering areas, so like I showed with gates and fences, that will keep people from hiding out in areas that they shouldn't be. And another problem that we see is people utilizing exterior electrical receptacles to charge their phones and other devices. So we just encourage people to throw the breakers if they don't have to be accessing those power supplies outside of their business. And lastly, just to discuss some of the successes that the Downtown Patrol Unit has had over the last 3.5 years. So we figured there's roughly about 220 shops and services downtown. We made contact with all of them, so they have our contact sheet. We asked them for some information if they have any common issues so that we can be aware of it and help triage and identify solutions to that. The transit terminal recently hired security guards 24 hours a day. That started in April of 2022. The transit terminal used to be a problem area for us. Now we don't have hardly any issues there, or they're definitely mitigated for sure. As I said, building relationships with social services so we can work together to solve some of these problems. And one of our biggest resources, the Alberta Health Services outreach team, couple ladies that deal with the same population that we do and have different rapport with them, so we lean on them quite regularly to help deal with some people. That is all I have from the Downtown Patrol. Is there anybody with questions?
Just prior to getting to questions, first of all, I want to thank Brian and his team. They do amazing work down there, and it's thankless at times. Brian mentioned that they offer these supports and services day in and day out, but until someone's ready, you can't make that difference. But thanks, Brian, for what you and your team do. One thing I do want to make sure we address before questions is that all of our partners that Inspector Secondiak mentioned, they've all been doing their work over the years too. So this is, the difference this year is we're gonna do it together. So we're there as a team, so all the services arrive at once and you have better chance of success. I just don't want anybody to leave here to think no other partners were doing their part, because they absolutely have been along the way. We're just gonna try something different this year, and we'll open it up from there.
Thanks, Chief. Thank you for your presentations. Any questions, comments from Commission? Vice Chair Carolyn?
Through the chair, thank you. Sergeant Bourne, I'd like to commend you and your team. I've seen you in action downtown, and what the work you and your team doing is incredible, and keep up the good work. I do have one question for you and one for Inspector Sakoniak. Obviously, you're not running around downtown with a computer-aided dispatch, so I'm just curious how you keep track of the calls that come in, both emergent and non-emergent, and then how does that affect your specific dispatch triage of that and having to do reports?
Okay, thank you. So we don't have a CAD per se, but our phones, our cell phones do have Versadex, which is our computer dispatching. So when we get a phone call or a text, we have the capability to go in and create a call with all the information. So some people bug us saying, no, it looks like the three of you are texting each other as we're staying on a street corner. Those are our work computers, so we're often generating calls, adding entities or people into those calls and clearing out our reports, and we can do all of that on our phone, which saves us a bunch of time from going back to the office to have to do that and makes us available on the streets more. So that was the first part, and then the second. Okay, perfect.
And Inspector Sekondiak, if I could, you mentioned you're intelligent, and thank you for your presentation as well. The intelligence analyst. Just wondering if the system allows for deconfliction of that intelligence, and so that if perhaps other units are looking at as more potentially serious crime, is that happening so that DPU or other members are not engaging?
Yeah, great question. So we have two analysts with the service. One works with Alert and the other is in for the police service. So they meet frequently and deconflict all the time. So Amber, our crime analyst, knows everything that's going on all the time and talks to staff sergeants and all the units. So she's invaluable. Actually, I don't know what we would do without her knowledge. So.
Thank you both.
Commissioner Sir?
Just noticing, thank you very much for the presentation, by the way, but I just noticed not just noticed, but you mentioned it too, your unwanted guest statistic is your highest kind of problem area. I'm assuming it's not one person going to 16 different businesses and being unwanted. It's multiple people that are unwanted or causing havoc in businesses, or what are they doing?
Yes, that's correct. So it's not one person, but it's our biggest complaint. So a business would call us because they've got one or two people hanging outside of their business or maybe acting a little bit weird outside of their business or behind, so they call us. So I would like to, I guesstimate that we probably have about 60 vulnerable people in the downtown core that we deal with on a fairly regular basis. So it could be any one of them or groups of them, right? Or it might be just a certain area that we're attending to, but yeah, it's not just one person all the time.
Just a quick follow-up question then. So the problem is there's people don't have anywhere to go, and we need to move them somewhere or give them an opportunity for shelter, or what's the solution to that?
There's definitely places for them to go. As I said, there's plenty of resources in Medicine Hat. So the Salvation Army Resource Center at the 5th Avenue Church is open from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. So that's often where we send them when we find them in the back alley hanging out. It's like, you guys got to go to the church, or you can go to the Mustard Seed, which is open during daytime hours too, right? So it's just us encouraging them to go where they can lawfully congregate and hang out and not disrupt people, but it's certainly not that they don't have anywhere to go. It's just they're hanging out near a business or private property that doesn't want them hanging around there.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Johnson?
Two questions, one for each of you. Inspector, was watching a thing on YouTube the other day, and an interview from Edmonton. And they were talking about having a system where when they take an encampment down, that they have the province actually show up with provincial reinforcements and also with all the stuff that the province does. And so that when they take these people out of the camps, they have a place to go, they have a hot shower, they have a bus to get into. Are we able to get any of those resources from the province and, or not, or?
I actually haven't checked with the province, so I don't know if we could do that here, but I have seen personally, I went to Edmonton last February, and their issue with encampments is far different than ours. They had blocks with, I would call them hard structure encampments, undoubtedly because they let things get carried away. Ours, we have a definition for the peace team. It's not just somebody with a blanket over their head downtown. It's more of a structure than that. But most of ours are very temporary, and we're hoping to move them along and get them housed immediately. So we can do the same thing without the government of Alberta's help. All of the agencies I listed there are there to help people. Housing, I know Brian calls housing quite frequently easy to deal with, so we can get these people housed. That isn't the issue. It's just sometimes they have to follow rules where they go to in a house or a home, and outside they don't have to all the time. And it's just difficult, but moving them along won't be a problem. The other thing I should have mentioned, our stats, I think I said there was 134 last year. That number will go up significantly because we're being proactive and searching them out. So I estimate that it's going to probably double, if not triple, for next year. So hope that answered your question.
Thank you, yes.
And Commissioner, I can tell you one thing, that is when the Compassionate Care Act that the province has started, and when that's fully realized, there will be facilities in Lethbridge related to taking care of folks that suffer from mental health and addiction. There's lots to come around that, I would expect by later this year, probably in the fall. And I think that will augment big time what these folks are trying to do with more resources available for more long-term care to get people out of the cycle. So there'll be more to come on that, but I think we're going the right way.
Okay. Second question, and Sergeant Borden, whether this is a question for you or whether you want to kick it upstairs to the inspector. One of the complaints that I hear is from people worried about the banking situation downtown and the homeless causing problems in the ATMs. I'm just wondering if there's anything that's been done to address that, or whether it's not a problem, whether what I'm hearing isn't true, or I don't want to say not true, but inaccurate perhaps.
So, like I said, the unwanted guest complaints, that would be something that a bank would call us because somebody's in their ATM area hanging out, right? And typically that's when the weather's inclement like it is today, right? I got a call this morning from one bank because the guy was hanging out acting kind of weird, so sent him on his way to the church, right? It was open. It can be an issue because they are open areas and people can slide in there and hang out. Like I said, we have good relationship with the banks and they call us or text us whenever there's somebody in there that they want sent on their way. One way that the banks have combated that, because when I very first started, the ATM areas were open throughout the night downtown and employees would come to work and there was full-on encampments inside the doors. Some banks started locking their doors after a certain period of time, let's say 11 p.m. till 7. Well, these people are resourceful and they learned that at 11 o'clock the doors automatically lock, so they're inside there at 10:55, and now they've got a secured place to stay for the rest of the night. So they've started I think just about every single bank ATM area is locked at the end of the working day so that they don't have to worry about somebody going in there, damaging their property or sleeping overnight. And it's open in the morning by employees when they show up for work to eliminate the encampment issue.
And the banks have no problem with that? Like, I would think they'd be losing money. They don't have a problem with that?
It's certainly not the best for their business. I hear lots of frustration from people in the evenings, you know, where can I go to get cash out? And unfortunately, there's only one drive-through ATM in downtown that is open and accessible 24 hours. But it's the one way they figured that was a better balance than coming to a damaged ATM area in the morning.
Thank you.
Counselor Hirsch?
It's actually a great segue. I actually work for above noted bank, one of them. And in fact, yes, the idea of closing it down and locking it is basically out of safety. So we don't want to necessarily engage employees into a dangerous situation. So for the most part, I think customers have been really receptive and somewhat appreciative in terms of making sure banks, again, when you're losing business, we're putting that as a secondary consideration as opposed to our staff safety. So, yeah, I think unfortunately, it's been a bit of an inconvenience. I for one, you know, you can tell a banker's never has any money, and then he always has to go to the bank machine, and you go, oh yeah, it's locked. But it does its job. Going back to the point on the inclement weather, we definitely see that in our vestibule. So when they get a chance, if it's a colder day, they'll kind of just walk in, act like they're going to use the ATM, and then just kind of look out the window and I'm waiting for a friend. And then after a time, you just say, you know what, if you don't mind, you can just kind of be on your way. So there has been some incidents where it's just been completely fine and they've moved on. So, but again, yeah, I think there's been innovative ways in terms of just kind of dealing with some of the challenges. So on a general sense, I just want to thank, you know, Inspector Secondiak. You rolled out Peace. I really enjoy it. I think it's going to be something that is going to make a difference. I love the idea of the KPIs, looking at things that work well. And so what it tells me is you're just not going to be a presence. You're actually working as a more of a comprehensive plan, doing some did wells next times, and I think that's really appreciative. My question to you, Inspector Secondiak, is council going to get this presentation? And the reason I'm asking is because there's we can get some coverage out into the community, and that's a little bit of a nice template to use.
I believe we can present this to council. It'd be a conversation with Chief Murphy after the fact, but it's something that can absolutely be done.
Yeah, it's just a new initiative you're doing, so I think it's worthy. So I appreciate that. You know, it's funny you mentioned the 500 block of 3rd Street, from which I work from. So we do know it is a bit of a hotspot based on some of the services that are provided there. I can attest that, yes, there's some congregation, but for the most part, it's like any other business. There's people going. There is a security element that's around there quite often, and I find myself very comfortable, parked there all the time, no issues. Not downplaying it, it's just the facts from my perspective. Sergeant Bourne, thank you for your presentation as well. Appreciate your efforts of your team. We really do, we being as a downtown merchant myself. One of the things that we really like is the fact that it's a regular team that's down there. I think sometimes it run into, if you go into different shifts and they don't know the goings-ons, if you will, it's helpful that you had some longevity down there. You kind of know what's going on and have your ear to the ground, and that's really helpful. I know, talking to some of the merchants, they're really appreciative of the efforts. So, and they really are, I say that in all sincerity. So thanks for your efforts. You mentioned multiple times, and of course in your rounds, you would get to know, you know, the faces around there, and you indicated about 60. My question to you is: are you seeing new faces? Are you seeing a decline? Is 60 high? Is it trending higher, or is it, you know, where is it relative to kind of year over year or month over month what you've seen?
First off, thank you for the compliment. And I actually just talked with the people at the Resource Center, the Salvation Army Resource Center, about numbers too, because I wanted to see if my estimate was accurate, and she felt it was. When I first started down here in 2020, I would say we dealt with about 45-ish homeless, vulnerable people on a regular basis. So in my experience, I would say it's increased about by roughly 15 maybe. Are they new faces? New to Medicine Hat, a few of them. Some of them are just new to homelessness. There's people that we've dealt with as a police service my entire career who have always been housed and then have run into tough times, whether it's their drug addiction or whatever, and lost their housing, and now they're downtown. So to some of the business owners downtown, they're new faces, but they're not new faces to the police service. So I can think of probably about a handful of those 15 that are like that. Yeah, and then we always, in my experience, the last 3 summers I've worked downtown, every spring, summer, we gain a couple faces from people that are transient along the highway, and they stop in Medicine Hat and decide, hey, this is a pretty nice place to hang out. But we also lose some, whether it's continuing on east or west from here, or whatever the case may be. So it stays fairly steady throughout the years, but I would say there has been an increase over the last 3.
Just a follow-up too. So are you finding, and there was, I mean, of course, you know, Medicine Hat has its same challenges as other municipalities, and in fact, I've got a friend of mine that actually works for the Lethbridge service, and came on a weekend for a tournament with her son, and laughingly said, "You guys don't have a problem." So it's all relative, and no disrespect to any other municipalities. That, like, I think it's just important for us to understand. And again, it is something that's across Canada, and quite frankly, probably anywhere you go, you kind of see it on the rise. The question I had is that there's a lot of chatter around the community of sometimes groups or agencies just dropping people off in this community from other communities, et cetera. So can you shed some light on that? Can you kind of squash a rumor, that sort of thing that comes into play from time to time?
Absolutely, I can kind of do both, actually. So have we seen people sent here from other cities and agencies because Medicine Hat has so many resources? Yes. What happens in those cases is we're able to identify these new faces to Medicine Hat and make contact with them, find out why they're here and how they got here. And then we have a really good working relationship with community housing, who, if these people, and some of them, one young gentleman was flown here from Abbotsford, BC, of all places, because they heard we have no homeless and all these resources, and he was lost in our town. So we hooked him up with community housing and found out where his family and supports were, and they helped get him back home to where he's going to be more successful, because him in Medicine Hat with no resources, no support is not good for his recovery. And so Medicine Hat Community Housing has helped us many times to help get these people back to where they're going to be successful and not remain in Medicine Hat unless they need to, right? That being said, we're not just shipping our problem people out of our city for no reason. There has to be a reason for community housing to do that, and it's based on supports and other things that they've got going on for them in other cities. So that's how we combat that. Yeah, there is rumors that busloads of people have been dropped off, and the resource center, they heard a busload of people got picked up and taken away from here. We're not seeing that. Like I said, we might increase by 2 or 3 a year kind of thing, but it's certainly not busloads of people.
No, I appreciate that, and I think it's important for maybe just the community to know that we're part of Palliser Health Authority, which is a regional resource of basically Southern Alberta. So within that capacity, when they have, and when I say they, it's the Palliser Health Authorities, recognize that there may be services that could be rendered here in Medicine Hat. They make the appropriate referral. So I think it's the idea of help versus dumping, and certainly looking towards assisting people when they're ready to receive services, that they're done in the right amount of time, and being proactive to be, and ready to receive them is, I think, in my mind, certainly something that's very important. So so I appreciate, again, everything that's going on between the DPU piece, all the stuff that you guys are working on. It's really good work, so thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Dumanowski?
Through the chair, I think I'm going to dovetail on some of what Councillor Hirsch said, but I won't repeat it. But I did want to thank the chief and inspectors, and in particular, Sakaniak, for your presentation, and paying homage to the fact that through this data collection, a survey, that there is a real, perceived, little of both, some of both, about you know, the fear or perception of safety around downtown and areas, and then in kind responding to it, because the danger of gathering data and doing nothing about it is that people are cynical about participating in the future, or they don't, or they're upset. They become enraged at the fact that they actively are giving this information willingly, and it's collected and disseminated, and nothing is activated because of it. So I think I say this in the right way, but nothing you said is kind of earth-shattering, and yet it, you know, together, I mean, from the standpoint of being strategic, it will yield improvements. It will yield a more responsive and a nimble process that ultimately will enhance people's comfort. I don't think we're ever going to be able to take away people's perception of safety if that means if they encounter anybody that is homeless, that they don't feel comfortable. That is almost certainly never going to go away. And so, but what we can do is through our presence and our response systems and the business community saying, you know what, we're very pleased, which is consistent with what I hear. And now we're going to do some things to even enhance that. Ultimately, that creates a threshold for comfort in the public, which I hope translates. So I wanted to pay respect to that. The other, Sergeant Bourne, obviously the Downtown Patrol Unit, DPU, is referred to, isn't new. Again, you have new members. I think the piece I wanted to, I guess, speak to there was around your guys' adaptations around the time of the year, because I'm not saying that people don't congregate in the winter as much as they do in the summer, but I think you spoke to that. In the warmer months, they tend to congregate more so, or more, in more numbers, and maybe more visible is the better way to look at it. So do you, without giving out sensitive information, but does your department alter your hours or your visibility or your response based on the time of the year, so that as people become more comfortable and in being outside, especially in the warmer months, and we have establishments downtown that encourage that, and we want to encourage them to go there, that they still feel that kind of response system is there at different hours of the day and night at different times of the year? Maybe that's my first question.
Yes, we do alter our hours. We found in working the winter months, when it gets darker earlier at 4:30 in the afternoon, and most shops downtown close around 5 o'clock, our hours are 8 in the morning till 6 p.m., 4 days a week. And then come spring, when the patio season is live and well downtown and there's more activity and things going on down there, we do have a shift that is from 11 a.m. till 9 p.m. to help address that. And of course, when Downtown Patrol Unit's not working, there's still patrol members assigned to that area to pick up. But based on our call volume, that's how our schedule's set up. So we can kind of balance both. The other thing to consider is if we worked all afternoon shifts, then we're going to miss a chunk of the morning, right, where we get some complaints. So our schedule is very balanced that way with those things in mind.
Counselor, we did one thing last summer that we never spoke to it publicly, but for about 6 to 8 weeks, we actually put some additional officers downtown on an overtime basis, which is not practical forever, but it was more of a pilot project downtown. The reason we told no one about it is because sometimes if you tell people you've done this, they'll see a change that maybe is not real. So we didn't tell a soul we did it. But then we started to get emails from business owners saying, I don't know what you're doing, but I see a change. So it started to work. So what we've seen by doing that is we got an idea of what could be possible. And this is obviously a budget year for us, and we'll go to council in the fall, and that's something we might bring forward. But we wanted to see, we didn't want to do this without knowing it could work. And so we did do that, and it was successful. And we did it during a very busy time of the summer downtown, and it worked well. So I think that's something we'll bring forward on a more permanent basis, and you'll hear about that later in the year.
Just if I could, through the chair, just kind of supplementary, and I'm known to be a talker, but I do want to kind of dovetail again on one of the comments Councillor Hirsch made, and it really is about, and it kind of speaks to what I said earlier about the perception and of people's comfort and relative to this, to a group of people who are often identified as homeless. And often as a council member, having been here, a number of terms, and our former mayor who was famously, and I say this with the greatest respect, known or became known as the poster person for ending homelessness in a community, and you kind of spoke to some of that. There's a misnomer around that, because often a lot of people think ending homelessness means there's nobody around. They're all gone. They're not visible anymore. The fact of the matter is there have always been homeless, and we will continue to encounter it. It really was around, and I'm not defending the process, but it really was around a housing first model and giving them access to services, giving them access to come off the streets. None of that has changed. So fundamentally, all the scaffold that is available under an ending homelessness model is still available. But you have to have participants who are willing to activate on that. And so, again, not defending it, but I hear that often, and with people, either frustration accompanying it, or they're kind of, cynical about it. But the fact is, all those models are there, and Medicine Hat are, and the partners are leaders in that. They really are. And so, to some extent, you become a target of your own talk or success, but we'll continue to work around that. When I say we, I mean the partners and the service and DPU and everyone else. The other piece of it is around, again, the fact that we all are challenged to really appreciate the human condition and the human element in homeless that we encounter. And it's not necessarily counterintuitive to have some reservation or fear around that, especially when you're with an elderly person or with a child. But the fact of the matter is, there is the human condition aspect to all this that we can't lose sight on. And I heard it over and over and over in all the comments that you made around getting to know them, creating relationships, helping through that be able to create direction or redirection. And really that is at the core of the function of what I think a DPU is. It's not to see a homeless person and take them off the street or remove them or put them elsewhere. I'll probably get some bad emails for that, but the fact of the matter is there is a human element to this, and we need to be mindful of that. So I think you guys are living up to that in spades. So again, thank you for the attention that is being brought to this from the standpoint of the survey, but also a continued thank you to the DPU and your leadership in recognizing that and doing everything you can.
Thank you.
I have one question, and I'm trying to be quick because I know you are been up here for a little while. You mentioned the Salvation Army Church and the Mustard Seed. Are they well utilized during the day? They have limited daytime hours. Are they well utilized during the day? Like, I guess the population, do they go there during the day because they have somewhere to congregate, and then it's after that that they are typically in unwanted areas, or?
So just to give you a snapshot of kind of the time. So the Mustard Seed nighttime shelter is in operation from 7:30 p.m. till 7:30 in the morning. And the breakfast program at the Mustard Seed Resource Center on Allowance Avenue is 8 a.m. till 10 a.m. So there's a migration of people utilizing the nighttime shelter for a half hour, getting over the overpass to the breakfast program. And then from the breakfast program, the Salvation Army Resource Center is in operation from 11 a.m. till 6 p.m. So again, there's a migration from Allowance Avenue through the train tracks over to downtown. So that's usually when we get our unwanted guest complaints, is because people start to meander, make their way to the resources, and then they either stop for rest, whatever the case may be, right? Or they just stop to socialize, hang out, sleep, whatever the case may be, and that's when they become the unwanted guests along the way. So to answer your question, are the resources well utilized? I would say by the numbers of people around the Mustard Seed daytime, like breakfast program thing, that the resource is well utilized. There's always a group of people hanging around there. We don't respond specifically to that area. It's outside of our area of responsibility. And the Salvation Army Resource Center is utilized very regularly. the lady that I spoke to today said the supper program last night had 110 people, and they typically have 70 people, so it was more utilized than in the past, like on most nights. Again, the weather plays a factor, and even the time of the month. So many of these people get an ACE check. So at the beginning of the month, some of these resources are vacant because they've got cash and they can go and buy their own meals and maybe get a hotel room or that type of thing. But then as the month goes on, the resources are utilized more because they're running out of cash flow. So those are some of the factors that we see in the trends, but I would say the resources are well utilized.
Thank you. And then I guess just a quick follow-up. It's kind of a polarizing topic, but if more areas like that or businesses or designated areas were built where people could go, would that be helpful? Or do you think they're just going to be spread around doing what they want to do?
That's a tough one to answer. I feel like the resources that we have in place right now are adequate for the number of population that we have that are utilizing them. I don't feel ever like, geez, we need another place because this place is overflowing with people. So I feel like we have enough resources. I don't feel like there's a need to add more personally.
Thank you. I see a public question up top. Did you have something, or were you?
Just for one moment, please. My name is Dwayne Rosette, I'm a downtown business owner, and I have experienced 45 years downtown, and I do appreciate the patrols that have been there. In my opinion, it has improved downtown. It's not worse. It is better. I would like to ask one question, and not necessarily of you, of the commission. I think, would you consider a satellite location downtown, just a small satellite police location, as part of a solution to an ongoing problem?
Chief Murphy?
Thanks for your comments, sir. I appreciate it. So we are obviously, you're aware where we're located, very close to downtown, just within a few blocks. Obviously, we're across the track, so there's a bit of difference there. I will say, though, we do have a location downtown. It's not a place where it's a public-facing police office, but we do have an office within the downtown where our members can go so they can stay over in downtown. They can have their lunch. We're actually setting up computers there so they can do some work there if they had to. Sergeant Bourne mentioned they can do reports on their phones. They can just literally stay on the roadside. So we hear you around that. I don't know if it would be cost effective to have another station so close, but we do have a location that we work out of, not public facing, like I said, where it keeps us over in the downtown. So, but the way technology is these days for our officers, they can, if in Brian's case, he can do things from his phone, as can other officers, but they can also do them in their cars if they stay around the downtown. In my time of policing, not only did we write on paper, but we tended, every time we did something, we went back to the station. And so those days are largely gone now. People can stay in the district they are working in, including downtown, so it's more efficient. So I hear you, and we do have some things we're working on around that to keep our folks over in the downtown. You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to item 7, standing items, police budget update from Chief Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be quick with this. So the current budget variance is up to the end of February of 2024. It's in the early going, but currently projecting a negative variance at year end. We have measures in place, obviously, to start to correct that, and we report back to you monthly on how that looks, whether it's increasing or decreasing, and why, and what the drivers are. So we'll continue to report as we move forward.
Thank you. Any questions for Chief? Okay. 7B, the AAPG report. So I don't have a report from AAPG. We do not currently have a commission rep, but I'm wondering from commission if anyone has given thought to putting their name forward to be potentially elected to AAPG. That'll be part of the AGM being held May 3rd and 4th in Lethbridge. The executive director has asked, if possible, if we could put a name forward by April 5th. So I wasn't sure if anyone here had a desire. Commissioner Dirk? Anyone want a motion that we nominate Commissioner Dirk for AAPG rep?
I will certainly make that motion, thanks.
Okay, any seconder? Commissioner Johnson? All in favor? Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Dirk. I will put your name forward to the executive director at AAPG. And Medicine Hat has had a representative for quite a long time. It's not a guaranteed seat, but it's pretty certain that that will occur at the AGM. But they will do that vote May 3rd, 4th. Also on that is the AGM May 3rd and 4th. I know we've talked briefly before about commissioners interested in attending. I think we have 4 currently. Commissioner Carolyn, I don't know if you were interested or available that weekend? Yes? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Counselors, were either of you interested in attending or able to attend? No? Okay, so we'll have 5 commissioners attending AAPG. I'm unable to attend that weekend as well, but I have full faith that my fellow commissioners will bring back all of the great information. It looks like a really good conference. Lots of educational opportunities there. Okay, I'll work with Melanie on registration for that. Okay. And we'll communicate confirmed registrations as soon as we get it all done. Okay. Office of the Chief Report, Operational Services, Inspector Secondiak.
Thank you. I'm going to be very brief because you've heard enough of me tonight. Just under patrols, I just wanted to highlight one program that we launched last month in February. It's our Patrol Intelligence Officer Program. So this was a program that was brought to light by our members themselves, patrol officers. So they wanted this PIO program, as we're calling it. So we identified 2 constables in every team that attend all of the weekly intel meetings, and they share information amongst themselves. They work with SCAN, and they brief the teams on in their patrol briefings on crime trends and areas to focus on. So new program, it's been around for about a month now, but thus far it seems highly successful, and I can't wait to see where it goes. It actually ties in very well with our downtown strategy as well, why I'm highlighting it tonight. That's all I have to highlight in my report for this month, but I'd be happy to answer any additional questions you might have.
Any questions? No? Okay. Investigation and Support Services, Inspector West.
Thank you, through the chair. Just one thing I want to bring the Commission's attention to is from our criminal investigation section, we did have a number of incidents, 2 in particular, where people were sprayed with bear spray. Unlike most of our bear spray type incidents, the victims were unknown to the perpetrators. And the criminal investigation section really sort of dug into this file, and I believe we had some intelligence that bubbled up from patrols in our school resource unit, and they ended up making an arrest and arrested 2 youth and 1 adult. And I was happy that our section dug into that file. We know that the bear spray is definitely a weapon of choice amongst the criminal element, so it was a really good file to get wrapped up. And that's it for investigation and support.
Any questions? I lied, I might have a question for Inspector Secondiak. I thought this was Inspector West, but I realized I had the wrong section. Under Forensic Identification Unit, you've noted there's been an unusually high number of firearms offenses locally. Can you explain, is that more just finding them? Are they discharged? Are there incidences?
Thank you. I believe it's all of the above. I think we've reported here before that in most of the alert files that Joe's teams are involved in, they're finding firearms and weapons in just about every investigation. And in last month in particular, I know the alert teams and patrols were involved in some files where there was a lot of firearms seized. So again, very concerning to us that there's more and more illegal firearms on the street. So if there wasn't a call that I can think of that was where there was multiple, but it is a trend we're definitely seeing more and more, especially with drug-related offenses.
Thank you. No further questions? Chief's report, Chief Murphy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And through the chair, I'll just respond to Councilors Dumanowski and Hirsch regarding the DPU presentation and the Peace Team presentation. I'll reach out to the city manager and city clerk in the morning and arrange for that to be brought forward to the next council meeting as soon as possible, preferably the next meeting, just because I think after that, things will start to get busier downtown. I think it's important information to get out to as many people that can hear it. So we'll make an effort at that in the morning. And otherwise, some of my activities and the Office of the Chief activities last month were noted in the report, and happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Seeing none. Okay. New business 9A, strategic planning session update. So following our presentation from Framework Analytics on our survey last month, I think we have some new goals that the commission would like to work on. Now, Rita, I'm not sure if we were able to get any availability from Mr. Milne on his ability to help facilitate a strategic planning session.
Do you have a potential timeline you'd like to?
Okay, let's do that first. Do we want to maybe meet in April, and would it be evenings, weekends, or do we feel a couple lunch hours would be sufficient? I'm not sure. I'll open that for discussion. Commissioner Hirsch?
Just from a content point of view, what would be of value? Are we talking about what length of time we are going to be for the strat planning, or?
Do we know what how long he was down last time?
I believe it was one full day. It was a weekend full day.
Okay. Let's table that then. I'll maybe circle out some availability and we'll see if we can find some time. Okay. 9B is the media training. We have some dates proposed for April, and I think I've got some responses here. April 9, 10, 11, 24, 25 was, there any other interest in taking this training? Commissioner Johnson, were you interested in? Do you?
Whatever the dates are chosen for the majority, I'll make myself available.
Okay. Vice Chair Carolyn, were you only available that one date? Okay. Then I think we're gonna go with Thursday, April 11th, unless we wanna look at some alternative dates. We've already been talking about this for a couple months and haven't been able to find a solid date for everyone. It's hard to bring everyone to the table. Counselors, were you interested at all or no? No, okay.
What time would that be?
On the 11th, anytime after 6, probably closer to a 6 start.
Okay.
That would work?
Should work.
Sorry, is this going to fit in with that media training as well, or
That is what this is, yeah.
at the same, oh, that's what it is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's the strategic planning.
No, we moved on to media training. We're gonna table strategic planning probably to a weekend. We just have to figure
Oh,
out
okay, okay.
a weekend
So I
that
was just
works.
looking at my calendar, I got lots of stuff on the go in April, so.
April 6th is a Saturday?
April 11,
Sorry, April 11th.
after 6 PM.
Yep, that works.
Okay. I'm gonna make a motion then that we book that for Thursday, April 11th at 6 o'clock, if we can try, okay? And seconder for that? Mr. Johnson? Okay, all in favor? Are we good with that? Let's do it. Okay, done.
Where will that be, Sarah? Sorry.
Probably the community boardroom, but I will confirm that with Rita and send out all the details once it's confirmed. I just wanted to try to get that, because it's been a topic for a little while. Okay. Community consultation. We'll now move to the public consultation portion of the meeting. Is there any member of the public that is present, aside from official media, who would like to pose a question or provide a comment to the commission? Couple. Okay. So before we open this session, we would ask that you kindly respect the following guidelines. Please note that complaints about officer conduct or MHPS policies and any details concerning ongoing investigation or personnel matters are not topics for this forum, as per the provisions set out in the Alberta Police Act. You'll be given up to 3 minutes to present your comments and questions, which will be directed to the chair of the commission. The chair may in turn ask members of the service to respond if appropriate. If the above guidelines are acceptable to you, we now ask that you approach the podium for your address.
Okay, my name is Kelly Allard. I'm not here as part of the media. I'm here as a citizen. I saw the presentation that Sergeant Bourne did, and I wish he was here for me to compliment him, because I've seen him work with some of the vulnerable people downtown, and you know, the unit, the patience that they have is incredible, and the compassion. So I just wanted to pass that along. And there was another thing I wanted to comment on. The recruitment team had an open right for some exams last Saturday. And they were kind enough to indulge me, my curiosity, and allowed me to write them. And I found that they were well run, and the monitors were very good. They put people at ease, and they made sure that people understood everything. So I just want to send along my compliments. It was fun.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank you, Ms. Allard. It's great to have you do that last Saturday with, I think we had a lot of people. We had 2 full rooms writing that exam, so thank you for doing that. And also thank you for being kind enough to post about it, your positive experience. Really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep, me again. Ian Parkinson. This is more of a heads up, and I'll make it really quick. There is a movement to remove the South Alberta Light Horse from Medicine Hat. I realize it's a federal issue. I realize it's political, blah, 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 blah. I bring it up at the Police Commission mostly because the South Alberta Light Horse and their predecessors for the last 125 years have stepped up every time this city had a disaster. Rain, snow, flood, windstorm, you name it. If they do away with the South Alberta Light Horse, you will lose anywhere between 50 and 80 able-bodied young people who are immediately prepared to respond to an emergency. So if you can do anything about it, I would appreciate your support in putting a stop to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Parkinson. I think we have a good relationship with the Sally Horse here in town and have for a long time, so we appreciate it. Maybe we'll have a discussion how we can advocate for against something like that happening. So thank you.
Okay. On upcoming meetings, next meeting is Wednesday, April 17th here at Council Chambers at 6 p.m., followed by one Wednesday, May 15th at 6 p.m. Any further discussion or questions? Okay, seeing none, I declare this meeting adjourned at 7:54.